to rant, usually there's a rant in there. Now, coming out of this particular Labor Day, usually, at least, previously in the few years the talking point has been on the air, Labor movement, it'll mainly be complaints, things the government did wrong, or things that they say the government did wrong. Take your pick with regards to how you want to perceive it, right? Criticisms, of course, of the government, because the government is one of the biggest employers in TNT. And to be fair to the labor unions that criticize the government, it's not as though I am here saying everything is fine with the government, everything they do is fine, every decision they make is great. No. Contrary to that, I am in a position where I have issues with the government, but I also have issues with how unions conduct their business. So, with the exception of the teachers' union, TUTA, who has declared, much to my appreciation, ironically, this is one of the few times that I have a positive feeling towards the decision coming out of TUTA or similar unions. They have decided to be apolitical. But outside of that, apparently, there is an effort made to unify the unions to be part of an alliance to work against the PNM in the next general election. That is what's been reported. That is what apparently has been said by the head of JTUM, Ansel Roje, the Joint Trade Union Movement. Now, he's not saying that they're going to join the UNC. He's saying they have their own party, the MSJ. Cool, which I also have questions and concerns about. But again, to be fair, an organization like the MSJ isn't always wrong. And even if I have issues, and I say this all the time, you have to some extent, divorce the message from the messenger and consider it to some extent from its own merits. Of course, you don't necessarily completely separate the two. You still have to take into account, well, at times this speaker has shown biases, so there at times will be reasonable assumptions to be made about what it is they're saying, about how to interpret their message. But at the end of the day, to some extent, the content, the details is what it is. And some of the criticisms of the MSJ and the Joint Trade Union Movement, I can't necessarily fault them for. It's just that I don't necessarily always see these groups of people actually working towards the benefit of their members. That's ultimately my criticisms of most unions. Some unions less than others, some union leaders less than others. But most unions, that's mainly been my criticism, because when I look at how they conduct their business, it seems to me that it's one-track minded, stubborn, oversimplified, and does not necessarily address all the concerns of its members or possible concerns. It mainly speaks about one thing: more money. I want more money for my members. And you would say, well, Sean, why is that a bad thing? Because at times you're giving up negotiating power to get more money and conceding or ignoring other legitimate issues that will impact the work environment, the quality of the job. And then also there is the fact that, look, if I undermine my employer too much, my employer might decide to close up shop. Now, to some extent, they did it with BWE and they did it with Petrotred, and you could argue it's union busting. But at the same time, why make it easier for anyone to justify doing an action like that? Because it's not as though anyone has successfully taken the government to court over BWE or Petrotred as union busting. Maybe I am incorrect and someone could correct me later on that. But more or less it seems as though they got away with it, right? So then now, calls to kick out the PNM On one hand, I understand it. There's a lot of disappointment with regards to the government. But the thing about it is, I don't actually see the UNC making different decisions with regards to certain things, to be honest. Yes, when the partnership was in power, they may have seemed to have made different decisions, but you have to understand, there was a lot more money, hence there was a lot more leeway. Now maybe the UNC will make different decisions, but the economics of it more or less implies they would have to be even more responsible than the PNM in order to increase spending in any significant way and to cut taxes in any significant way, or at least potentially irresponsible. Unless they do some mammoth exercise to make government spending more efficient and to cut out as much waste as possible. But the waste happens at so many levels. It's not just big projects, it's small purchases. It will take a significant amount of time and effort, possibly more so than any one term. And the amount of effort it will take to do so, like the NAR, you run the risk of being voted out in the next election because you didn't address other needs that the population deemed important. Because it's hard to sell people on, oh, well, we've reduced waste, because it's not as though they're going to see any benefits tangibly with regards to their own wallet. But again, JTAM is now saying we're going to kick out the PNM. And what did I say before? And while I'm trying to be fair, I'm not saying that I disagree with everything the unions say. I'm not here to say that the government, the PNM, has done everything correct. But the flip side is this, and I said this with other entities that speak about getting rid of the PNM. If that's all you're campaigning on, then you're literally offering me nothing. Then you're saying, vote in this unprepared group of people whose only consideration is the election and has no actual consideration, capacity, planning, no intentions. They are unable to tell us what their plans are, so we're voting and hoping that if they get into power, they'll actually be able to do something right. That's not a campaign platform, kick out the other guy. I know it works. Generally speaking, it works in the election. It doesn't necessarily work for governance. It doesn't necessarily work for the country. And therein lies my concern. I'm trying to divorce the message from the messenger, but to some extent, unions tend to be self-serving. And by self-serving, I don't mean, again, for the benefit of the members. I mean for the benefit of the union. Union and members are not necessarily the same thing. Because then what benefits the union? The union leader. The union leader reaps most of the benefit, just like the political leader reaps most of the benefit with regards to a political party, etc., etc. Just look at what happened with the PSA. The former head of the PSA was able to leverage that to some degree into a political career in Tobago. He didn't want to give up the PSA, that is to say Watson Duke, but he was forced to do so. Unfortunately, the tactics that worked to hold on to power in the PSA didn't necessarily apply in the THA and with the PDP. Because whereas the PSA has a monopoly over its members to represent them, the PDP did not have a monopoly over Tobago. But with that said, it'll be interesting to see how this moves forward, because there are other questions about the election, and we'll get to that in a bit. But let's move on to the next story. And of course, like I said, as we all know, it was Labor Day. The Prime Minister had an interesting Labor Day message, and one of the aspects highlighted, one of the key points was with regards to AI. And AI is now the boogeyman of labor, basically speaking. A lot of jobs potentially could be replaced by AI. It just depends on if a business is willing to innovate, willing to put in the funds to develop new systems, new way of doing things, and if the consumers will also accept those things. An obvious example that currently exists, of course, is self-checkout. To some extent, of course, parts of the process is automated by a digital system. AI is not actually intelligent. It's just a system that's programmed to try to respond in a correct manner. It doesn't always work. So if you've ever been to the self-checkout lanes in one of the major supermarket chains, you may know that every now and then it gets glitches. You still need someone to come and help you because you scan something and put it on the scale and it says it doesn't read it and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And there are other issues with self-checkout. Apparently some groceries in the United States, they actually had to remove them because customers were taking advantage and figured out how to steal because they didn't have anybody actually monitoring the self-checkout. And if you need someone to monitor the self-checkout, then you're kind of defeating the purpose of automating the job in the first place. You could automate a lot. You could potentially automate driving. That's a concern for truckers. You could potentially automate illustrations. That's a concern for artists. And the Prime Minister pointed out repetitive work, digital work. And to some extent it's true. It's not necessarily as big of a concern now as it will be in the future. We don't know how well these systems will be improved and how fast they will be improved because AI can make mistakes. And there are a lot of jobs where, depending, you can't afford mistakes. So you'll always need human oversight. Technically, planes could fly themselves. You still have two pilots in the cockpit. They could even land themselves. Even naval fighter jets could automatically land itself on a carrier. You still have a pilot. But here's the thing about the criticism. One of the issues is whenever something disrupts parts of the economy, those economies that are the most vulnerable are the ones who do not have enough diversity. So if their limited scope of the economy falls under the areas affected, it will mean a significant portion of their economy is affected. That is to say, look at what happens when there's disruption to fossil fuels. When something unexpected happens to oil and gas. Now, sometimes it benefits us and sometimes it doesn't. When the prices bottom out, we have a problem. And because we're not diversified, it affects us because it makes up so much of our economy. Now, take that with regards to labor. Our economy is not diverse. The types of jobs offered, and to be fair, we're a small twin island nation, so there is practical limitations to what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, our economy not being diverse means that given that a lot of people either work for a bank or work in some sort of retail situation or work in some sort of insurance company, and then we have maybe 2 telecommunication companies, we have a lot of government work, we have restaurants and bars and some drinks manufacturing and some canning, and then all of a sudden, the large employment sectors starting to dry up, right? Yes, you might be a naval architect or a diver, but it's not as though those jobs are employing a large amount of the population. So then what happens is, when you don't have diversity in your job market, if AI impacts any one of these significant jobs, it's a lot of people who are going to be affected, and we don't have the foundation to then absorb this disruption, to then pivot the economy, to then find jobs for people that are not affected by AI because we don't have diversity. We are not prepared if AI comes online in a major way. It's not there yet. I think a lot of the doom and gloom is premature. But what if it does come now and automate a lot of office work? How much jobs for the government in various ministries are going to now become obsolete because a simple, cheap program, relatively speaking, could more or less make I don't know, 60% of the public service redundant. Then what are we going to do? At a time when government revenue cannot keep up with government expenditure, and traditionally speaking, labor costs are around 70% of any entity's total costs, will a government justify keeping employees that it doesn't need to keep in order to ensure that we don't have large-scale unemployment, but then having to tell taxpayers we don't have enough money for CDAP, we don't have enough money to fix education, we don't have enough money to fix crime. Of course, the flip side is you can't just put out thousands of people out of work. That'll also have its own problems, so we'll be in a rock and a hard place with no good solution. You can't tax a nation into wealth, and you can't tax a population that is dependent on government salaries to live. It's kind of ridiculous. You'll be feeding on yourself. You'll be the snake eating its own tail. So it's nice that the Prime Minister wanted to be, to some extent, forward-thinking. I don't know to what extent he actually understood the technical terms that he was using. I tend to have, when I read well, not comments, but statements by politicians that are highly technical, unless they are learned people in that specific field, it tends to smell as though they're reading a written speech that was prepared for them. But the main thing is, I don't think we're prepared for AI. We're not. And part of the problem is not just private sector concerns or private sector decisions, it's public sector decisions. Who's the biggest employer of the country? How many of those jobs are not office jobs? You know what I wish they could do? I wish they could automate national security, but unfortunately, you can't automate patrols. Maybe we could automate some of the court processes. That would help, but we still have too many bottlenecks. All right, we will end it there. There were other topics that I wanted to get into. Something similar with regards to our water situation, but don't necessarily have time because while it's not her usual day, the good lady is here and she's waiting, and we will not make her wait any further. So let's take a break, and when we come back, we will switch gears slightly. Of course, it's going to be our politics and TNT. Stay tuned.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
Right.
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI. Worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break a balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen, and just a little snafu. But that said, we have the good lady herself. She is here joining us because there is something that happened in the legal profession, and not only is she a former Minister of Finance, not only is she an attorney at law, but she has taught many a law student that now, you know, walks the halls of Parliament and works in the legal profession. And of course, there's an obvious topic for her to weigh in on. But first, welcome, good lady.
Thank you very much, Sean, and I'm happy to be with you on Thursday and Wednesday having been a public holiday, and to all the trade unions and JTUM. I hope Labor Day was, I know it was on a day of rest, but I hope it achieved much of what you had set out to do. And, but we're not here to talk about that. We're really here to talk about the process of the selection of senior counsel, as we call it in Trinidad and Tobago, having become a republic. Prior to that, you would, when an attorney is elevated, because it is an elevation, and it is an sort of, it's not only an elevation, but it is a recognition by your fellow professionals and the judiciary of your superior, not only intellectual knowledge, but your superior advocacy, your sense of integrity, and also the way in which you are considered and by the members of the bench and by senior members of the legal profession and the Law Association, of course. That would be part of it. Now, the problem, of course, in Trinidad, I have to go back to the mother country, yes. Sometimes many of our traditions do come from England, having been a colony. But in this case, the rationale for them removing the Lord Chancellor as a person who would be responsible for the selection of what in 2000 before 2 years ago it would be called Queen's Council, now it's King's Council. But at the time when the issue was addressed, it was the sovereign was the Queen, so it was Queen's Council in England. And that had been an issue that had led to a lot of protests in England. It was not an issue that had not been, there was not a lot of discussion, a lot of argument, a lot of persons within the profession itself who were not unhappy about that, because it was going against the whole concept of the Westminster model, which we have inherited, of separation of powers, executive, judicial, and legislative. And the reason for that is that the person, yes, this is the person responsible until 2005 when they had a constitutional reform, and in fact in 2003 they made no appointments of Queen Council. So much was the furor and the views that were being expressed about what they considered not only the lack of in fact of the optics of it, but the fact that it was not a fair and equitable system, and it went against the whole principle of what England saw itself standing for. So why do I say they changed it then? Because the Lord Chancellor is one of the most senior members of cabinet. So he is a member of the executive. And this was the tradition prior to 2005, the tradition was that he would consult privately, so there was no transparency in that, privately with senior members of the bench, of course the Chief Justice. Well, he at that time was the Chief Justice also, but that was a change that also came with the 2005 constitutional reform. But senior members of the bench, senior members of the profession, and he would take into account their views in determining the persons who are fit to be Queen's Counsel. The difficulty with that was that a report was done and research was done on it, and what it was found, and they actually published it, they said the system itself was inequitable. It allowed for political injection into a process which had nothing and should have nothing to do with the politics of the day at all. And because remember, if you're a cabinet minister, you are part of a party, part of the party that is in government. It's not just in government, but you're part of the party that is in government. And that it was unfair, and the report showed that the majority of persons who were given that position were old, white men who came from upper class society in England and came from a prestigious law firm. And so that it was deemed to be both sexist, it was deemed to be classist, and also, of course, political. And for that reason, the Lord Chancellor was given an administrative rule. What did that mean? It meant that this is what the lawyers in Trinidad, the Law Association, the Southern Assembly of Lawyers, senior members of the bar, the criminal bar, Israel Khan, and even the current president of the Law Association, Lynette C. Brand Sweet, they have been fighting years now for change, that they say that decision should be made by a committee. So in England, what they did is they gave the Lord Chancellor this rule, the role of, as administrator, review, make sure that whatever the rules of procedure were complied with. But in terms of the selection of the members of what they called the Queen's Counsel Committee, Selection Committee, he had no part in that. And in the final decision, and they were given guidelines. They were given guidelines that they had to consider. And at the end of the day, when the committee had come to its decision, the Lord Chancellor could not add or take away any person whose name appeared on that list. His role now was to present that list to the Sovereign Queen and for her to announce the appointment of the Queen's Council. So took the politics out of the appointment. And the fact of the matter is that in Trinidad, as in most countries, if you are senior counsel doesn't do running down actions, okay? Senior counsel doesn't do simple contracts, breach of contract, unless you're doing it for a friend or whatever as a favor. Senior counsel is involved in constitutional matters, in judicial review matters, in which, of course, if that is the case, you are dealing with most of those all those matters, if they have a constitutional nature, judicial review involve the government of the day. And when I looked at the list, I said that I would not make any comment really about the persons that were selected because I don't hold any brief note, pun intended, for or against. But it seemed heavily weighted to persons who were either in the government or directly associated with the government. Because in Trinidad and Tobago, unlike England, yes, the persons are invited to apply. There's a gazette, I think April 14, 2023, inviting applicants to be considered for the post of senior counsel. They are given guidelines as to what is to be considered. And when I see what they're supposed to consider, it gives me pause. Let's just see, it gives me pause regarding the selection. That is all I will see. And what are the guidelines for that? I wrote it down, and they are, among them, professional eminence and distinction, which establishes the person as a leader in the profession. Sound intellectual ability. Of course, sorry, I don't mean to laugh. Of course, I don't mean to laugh. Of course. Oh God. And a thorough competence and up-to-date knowledge of the line of practice, total professional integrity, maturity of judgment and balance, outstanding ability as an advocate in the higher courts, highest professional standing, having gained respect of the bench and the profession, and a high quality of practice for at least 10 years. So there are guidelines and criteria set out for persons to apply through the Attorney General. But the final decision is made by the Cabinet, and the head of the Cabinet is the Prime Minister. So it is a political appointment, very much as it was in England. And then the list is given to the President, who, under the Section 80 of the Constitution, has to follow the instructions of the Cabinet. So in effect, the appointments that are made are being made by politicians. And it is not, you have the names of the persons, the 13. I'm not talking about Nizam Mohammed, who says that he met all the criteria and he might go under the Freedom of Information Act.
All right. Well,
what are the names?
We'll get that for you, but we have to take a break first. When we come back, we'll continue conversation. Stay tuned.
Hello there and welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. Before we even start this repatriation and reintegration process, we've already failed, or are we doomed to fail?
You've got to invest in the institutions that you've established to carry out those sorts of core functions.
We now get into the regional updates to give you an understanding of what's happening across our neighboring islands.
We have available a number of films that are worth showing.
So it was day one when the French Revolution started
to develop the concept of universal human rights.
What happened this time is unprecedented. It's one of the largest terrorist attacks in history.
Let's welcome Carl to the program. Carl is over there, next in Seth. Hello, Carl.
Silky anteater or pygmy anteater, and we have 2 of the 3 species of anteaters right here.
Coming soon to WESN.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
Respond to me.
respond to
me
you?
how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren. Coming soon to WESN.
And we're back to talk about hair, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, one of the contentious issues, and this is not the first time that this has been raised. Ironically, the current administration has been in office for almost 2 terms now. They had a whole other president, but for whatever reason, the period of this president seems to be marred with the question about the appointment of lawyers to the status, to the honor, to the position of senior counsel. And 13 names have been named, reported. I'm actually trying to find one of the articles that has all the names.
Yes, I would like you to do that because I want to make a statement with regard to the president. We cannot equate the Lord Chancellor position in England, where there was objection because they considered that to be political interference, with the president. The reason being, the president comes like the sovereign in England. The Lord Chancellor gives her at the time, because at the time that was the case, would give her the list, and her job was to just make the announcement. So she was in no way involved. And that would be true for the current president. The president is equivalent to the sovereign, if you want to put it that way, or a governor general. The issue comes with the prime minister, his attorney general, and his cabinet. That's where the political interference comes from, because it is they, the cabinet, are headed by the prime minister, who determines in a very opaque, lacking in transparency at all, except to tell you what the criteria we're looking for you to apply in the first instance. So I assume that when you are using that criteria for the application, you are using that same criteria for the determine on whom you would confer the position of senior counsel. Because senior counsel, by the way, is not only is a high honor in high regard, to be held in high regard in the profession. It's not only that, also too in court. When you appear in court, any counsel, whether they're in practice 20 years or as some have complained or not, they have to give way to you because you are senior counsel. And then the robes, they say you're wearing silk. And the reason why they use that terminology is prior to being becoming senior counsel, you wore your robe would be your gown. If you as an advocate in your advocacy in court, would be out of cotton, but once you became senior counsel, you now wore silk. So that's why they say you took on silk. So now your robe was made of silk. So everyone who sees you passing in that corridor knows that they are senior. And the most important part, I imagine, well, I shouldn't say the most important part, I think being given that recognition is a wonderful thing for any person to get to have. but it's your fees. Your fees go up, and they go up pretty high, because now, and you usually, if you're dealing with a matter for the government, which is most of the matters that would require a senior counsel, constitutional judicial review, as I said, a state enterprise, whether it's PARIA, whether it's any state enterprise, you would bring on senior counsel.
Right.
And when you bring on senior counsel, you have senior counsel that pays with junior. And the junior gets a percentage of whatever you pay to senior counsel. If you pay them $1 million,
yeah,
the junior counsel will be given, let's say, I can't remember exactly how the proportion, 1/3, 2/3, but he would get either 2/3 or 1/3 of what senior was. So once you have senior, your fees go up right away, and senior does most of the matters that will involve a government or government agency. So I just wanted to know who were the persons.
So here's the full list, their full titles and current position notwithstanding, but we have that for some of them.
I want to know the title and the current position, because that's important, because
Well,
the argument is, should the politicians,
yeah,
and that is what it is, should the Prime Minister, not the President, she can take the list, should the Prime Minister and his cabinet be the ones making the decision about who is senior counsel, which one of them which one of them gives them that right? Because what goes with that title is some of what I just said, the most important part being the fees. So what is the title of the persons or positions of the persons who were, 13 persons who were made senior counsel?
Okay, so of course, the big obvious ones, we have former Attorney General and current Minister of Local Government, Faris Alwari. We have Minister of Energy, Stuart Young, who I believe he has not, I don't think he has been, he hasn't had a ceremony yet because he was out of the country at the time. He was one of 3 people out of the country at the time, the others being Justin
And I've been practicing before the bar for the last 5 years.
Right.
Yes, I guess he has. He's been practicing before the bar.
We have TNT Intellectual Property Office Controller Regan Asagar Ali. We have, Michael Salmon de la Bastille, personal injury litigation lawyer and commercial lawyer. High Court Advocate Gregory Delzin.
Yeah.
Private and prosecutorial attorney Elaine Veronica Green. Criminal law, civil litigation and constitutional claims lawyer Lee Merry. Commercial litigator Mark James Morgan, WASA chairman and advocate Ravindra Nanga, of course, Port of Spain South MP Keith Scotland, advocate attorney Winston Senath, chief public defender Hassan Shaikh. I apologize, young lady.
Shaikh?
I'm not entirely sure. SHAIKH.
I can't help you.
I know, yeah, sorry. Former AG Anthony Isidore Smart and family law advocate Annabelle Ramona Suklal. And then, of course, there's Attorney Justin Phelps and Attorney Justin Dionarine.
Right. So, of the 13, and 5 of them have some, either are current members of Parliament or in some way directly.
That we know of.
That we
know of. We don't
know about the rest.
We don't know completely about the rest. And to be fair,
we don't know about the rest.
The thing is, one of the points Karen is trying to make, folks, it's not that we're saying, oh, they're all connected and they're condemned. The problem
I'm not
is
saying that at all.
The process. It will cause people eventually to ask the questions because it seems politically motivated, too many of it. So then now, at the very least, you're going to be asking, if you don't know the people personally, who is connected or who is not connected?
It's kind of unfair to them, because it is better that an independent body make that, because then when you get that appointment, no one can question or should question the legitimacy of that appointment. So to some extent, and actually on my way here this morning, I met one of them, anyway, I met him, and I said to him, in a way, it is a kind of unfair to you who are, those of you who have been appointed or been designated senior counsel, because there'll always be that sort of your persons who, for whatever reasons, might have, you know, their grouses against the government or the party or whatever. But in a way, it sort of dilutes or takes away from the eminence of your appointment. And, you know, in a way, it is unfair to you, because people will say, oh, he only get that because he's a minister. Oh, he only get that because he's a PNM. You know, and is that fair? Is that fair?
And it does not help that at least there's one name on the list that has come under heavy criticism, where I don't think, as much as he's tried to say that his record could stand up to scrutiny.
Why are you making it so obvious?
It's already obvious, and I already made it obvious. And Senior Counsel Israel Khan has even called him out on some of the statements he's made. So again, not only is he known for putting his foot in his mouth, but he's done so again, potentially, with regards to making remarks over Israel Khan's comments on the situation. So yes, I look, at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? When you have candidates that are significantly more questionable than the rest, and the process is questioned, right? And you have...
It's all opaque, and it's lacking in transparency and lacking the objectivity, and keeping the politicians out of it.
Because at the end of the day, we need to remember, King's Council, it's for the king. It started off as consideration for the king, right?
True.
So we didn't need transparency and accountability to the population back then. But of course now, the United Kingdom's government and society has evolved past a monarchy, right? And funny enough, we would technically never, well, we were to some extent under the rule of the monarchy, but our government was supposed to be independent of that.
Yeah.
And we are technically more behind, one could argue, than the United Kingdom in that regard. They have gone on to embrace a more transparent situation in order to help support democracy, whereas we are supporting an archaic system which is more in line with a monarchy or a dictatorship than a democracy.
Yes, in fact, I'm reading from a note that I had taken. It said, you know, well, in 2000, there was such an uproar over this whole thing that they suspended the appointment of the Queen's Counsel, as it would be then, because of the uproar from the members of the public, from the profession itself. And they said that prior to 2005, which is the year that they passed the Reform Act, the Lord Chancellor would make his decision. And remember, the Lord Chancellor is a senior member of cabinet. He's a politician. Lord Chancellor would discreetly, certainly not openly, consult with members of the judiciary, senior members of the bar, and thereafter he would confer the position of QC. The problem, as was spelled out by the members of the United Kingdom, and same here, it's not that we follow England, is the rationale for why they objected is a rationale that we can apply here. The problem was that the Lord Chancellor was a member of the cabinet and a senior member at that, and a politician. And the UK concern was that women, minorities were not being conferred and acknowledged that much or most of the positions went to white men from the more recognized, prestigious chambers.
I would say here that might be one area where we don't have the obvious, you know, demographic imbalance,
we don't have that.
Right?
That's not the
but
problem
we
here.
still have the political considerations.
And they had it there too, eh?
Back to what you said. You said this, to reiterate the point, you said this when the president's husband and brother got their silk appointments. No matter how deserving they are, of which you never doubted they're deserving the status. But the fact that she did it, as much as it might have been nice for her to do so, she might have been happy to do so, but the optics of it did not necessarily help the situation. And then now...
And you know what is the sad thing about that? Because I actually did go further to say when it came to Kevin Garcia that I absolutely had confidence in him being made a senior counsel. He was valedictorian when he was at law school. In those days, early days of my teaching, I had much fewer students, so I got to know them and I got to know him. He was hardworking, honest. I mean, I can't say anything negative about Kevin Garcia. So I had absolutely no objection. What I found was unfair to him, really, even though it might have been a nice thing for his wife to do it, you know, from a political and from our constitutional, you know, considerations. It would have been much better if Paula May, weeks prior to her leaving office, that she had conferred it, because you know what is going to follow him? And hopefully it died on, because he is more than worthy of the office. At least him. I can't speak for the rest. Not that I'm saying they wouldn't.
You just don't know.
Right. I can't speak in affirmatively. Right. I cannot speak in the same way as I can speak about him.
Yes.
That's what I will say. You know, I wouldn't be so bold as to say, Tom says so. I am saying that about him because I can say that about him. I taught him. I can say that about him. Unfortunately for him, to carry the weight, does he want, his wife make him senior counsel, them PNM, make him senior counsel. That's not fair to him. That's not fair to him. So if you have a committee that makes that decision, and it does not involve any politician, but persons who are respected, and they make the decision with criteria that is accepted by all, and they make the decision, then when we get the list of senior counsel, no one can doubt that they were deserving of the office.
But more importantly, I want to end where you began, because you were saying, you know, this is considered, this is respect given by the profession, by the members of the profession for senior and the bench. The problem is the bench and the members of the profession aren't necessarily central to the selection. So there's a bit of a disconnect here, because we have an elected official / cabinet appointment, right? Well, the prime minister. So you know, making a decision that will then have a significant impact to what is essentially a private profession and an industry, for lack of a better way to put it, right? Who must then now, because this politician has deemed it to be so, I must now, one, respect you, and two,
and
pay
I will tell
you more.
Something, because you said, yes, I am a lawyer, and yes, I would have taught a lot of people and so on. And I have had some people say to me, you know, I know I wouldn't be appointed. Now, I'm not saying it's true or not, but I'm saying this is their perception. I say, they don't want to take this case, because if they take this case, it'll be against the government, it'll be against the prime minister, and if they do that, when they're looking for the senior counsel, for which they are fully qualified, they would not get the position. I know that is true about a few people who should have been given that designation, or should be given that designation, who are afraid to do matters, because if they do the matters, they might incur the wrath of the government, of the party, and when it comes time to make a selection, they are not selected just because they went against the government, or the government lost against them. So that's the kind of thing you want to avoid, and Jamaica has done something about it. Right. They have set up a commission. They have about 8 or 9 people on the commission. At the end of the day, and they set their criteria, at the end of the day, the final decision lies with the cabinet. But it is hardly, from what I read, it's unlikely that the cabinet would change any names that are on that list.
Right, they would need to, the implication is, or the assumption is, they would probably have to give some serious justification.
You're right, and that has not happened. So they have gone that step further, and what we need to do is go the step of United Kingdom, get the politicians out of that decision making.
It's a hell of a thing, folks. It's a hell of a thing. I don't know exactly what other profession would stand, you know, operating in such a way. However, let's take a break. When we come back, we open the phone lines. I'm not sure, maybe some of the phones already started ringing, but stay tuned. This is Talking About WESN. We'll be right back after this.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe?
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim, right, or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI. Worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And there's a point that I want to make. However, we do have our first caller. So the phone lines are open. You can call and have your say. Please, when you're on air, mute your television. Don't try to speak to us by listening to the TV. With that said, St. James is already on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning. I have two questions.
Sure, go ahead.
The first one is, how did Nizam Mohammed know that his name was on the list? That's question number one. Question number two, well, that kind of a statement, really. I don't understand how my MP, with representing me, we don't see him at all. The Coalport man with his merry band of, the last time I saw him was before the last general election. We have never seen him since. We have never heard from him. You know, his merry band of followers, you know, traversing the streets and so. I don't follow how he got the SC. Thank you.
Thank you, God.
Well, the first question, I mean, how does anything get out in Trinidad? You have all kinds of ways people get information, but clearly he did get that information. Yeah. And regarding the second thing, he's not going up as a member of parliament, you know. He'd be talking about a completely different thing. They're talking about the legal profession and being elevated as a senior counsel. Whether he walks 10 miles or no miles, then you say you don't want him as MP. But if he is a good attorney, a lawyer, then it's two separate professions. And the last thing I want to say on that is, I wondered how they were able to do that with so many of the appointments made to ministers who could not be appearing before the courts because of their job as MP.
Yeah, you know,
I don't know how they were able to do that in the last 5 years.
How many cases as far as Stuart Young? 5 years, 9 years, Karen. 9 years.
Stuart Young, 9 years. Right, I don't know how they could do that.
Folks, but that being said, she's fair. You see, she's pointing out, you can't just criticize the man for not being a bad MP in your area. That doesn't mean he doesn't deserve senior counsel status. However, past behavior indicator. Anyway, let's go to Diego Martin on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean, and good morning to the Honorable ex-Finance Minister, Karen Nunes Teixeira.
Morning.
Ms. Teixeira, when they will give you the silk, I realize they leave Fitzy out too, so I don't know if they want to classify as Fitzy, because we all know Fitzy ability. I ain't say no more. I want to bat for Nizam Mohammed this morning. And I believe his utterances against the state and by extension the leadership of the country might have been contributory to him not getting it. He called out the Prime Minister recently for forming a committee to bring back those people from ISIS when he said, and they haven't gotten no resources to do anything. So what he was saying, the committee set up for the repatriation of the people from Syria was a pappy show. But the most critical thing I have to give him, and it shows his pedigree, you see, when he brought the president office into disrepute, and he got a judgment against the president from relieving him of the Police Service Commissioner based on his utterances about the ethnic composition of the police service. That has a lot to do with it. Because he won that judgment, and you know what that judgment tells me? They should have gone after Max Richards with respect to the Emailgate issue. When the Prime Minister of this country now went to the President and tell him all those lies, and which was never fleshed out. If that judgment that came out before that, then the police, if they had the testicle for the good to Max Richards, did this man tell you that? Did this man bring this lie to you? And they would have fleshed it out. So that alone tells me that man has testicle fortitude, and he rocked the boat. He rocked the state.
I want to say
thanks, caller.
To him only one comment. A lot of what you said, I'm not sure if I can agree or disagree with it, but I do think that the last point where he said, I mean, he have to be telling the truth, he had bold to say that he said that the Police Service Commission, the now current Attorney General, who is the one who looks through the list, he had asked him to resign from the Police Service Commission, and he said he was not going to resign. Or he said, if you don't resign, you'll have to fire me. So there's clearly not a personal, I don't say bad blood, there's a personal animus between himself and the Attorney General, who is the person who really is involved in this whole process, which is more the reason that they should step out and let an independent body make that decision. And with regard to Nizam Mohammed coming out, well, in a way, I'm glad he did, because that's why we're talking about it now.
The thing is, I would just like to point out that both Attorney Generals under this administration, I think, have been left wanting with regards to how they conducted themselves in the legal profession. And the lack of transparency allows Nizam Mohammed to say what he says, right? So it doesn't matter if he could be saying a whole set of hogwash, but because there's no transparency,
you get to sue him for defamation. You don't know that's how they're controlling people.
There's no transparency, right? At the end of the day, he can make those claims. Give us transparency then to disprove what it is he's saying, right? But they're not going to do it.
No, he's going on the Freedom of Information Act. He's going on the Freedom of Information Act.
We do have Faizabad on the line. Good morning, caller, on here.
Good morning, Sean, and good morning, Queen's Counsel pending. I know you would get under the gravy. Karen, I'm a little bit disturbed because I would have heard some judgment from the Privy Council against the former Attorney General. Comments made by the Privy Council. And the law lords belly must be clinching in England all now, you know. To know that this man was so incompetent as an Attorney General and is now rewarded. I can't say awarded, rewarded. Sean, I want to talk with you a little bit, my brother.
Go ahead.
I hear you with your rant on the trade union.
Yes.
You know, I didn't hear you when they were dragging the mannequin with Kamala up and down the place. But it hurt your belly this morning when you heard Roger on the platform last night, yesterday. You know, so I'm looking at the level of hypocrisy with the media when it comes to campaigning. They have the agent who would campaign very subtly. You know, and just fortunately or unfortunately, you are one of those. I was thinking that you would have brought up the leaking health ministry office in Port of Spain. I was hoping that you would look into the affair with the Jindal guy who is here in Trinidad, looking at the refinery, and he has 4 charges pending against him. I thought you were going to highlight that this morning, and with the Prime Minister posing for pictures together with almost half the cabinet with him. However, you chose to go after Roger. My friend, I don't know where you will take us. Take care.
Caller, it is very simple. The most timely pertinent news story is coming out of Labor Day. I'm going to talk about that first, and I ran out of time. That's basically it. That's point number 1. Point number 2, my criticisms of the unions are not limited to the election cycle. They are what they are. And at the end of the day, if you want to judge me for 20 minutes or less than 20 minutes of content, well, unfortunately, that is somewhat limiting, right? But this basically is no different to when someone watches one show where I or my co-host might criticize Kamala Prasad's predecessor, and we might have criticized the PNM for 4 days of the week. And Kamala for 1 day of the week, and all of a sudden we're P&M plans.
I will say this, in all fairness to Sean, I appear with Sean, we talk off screen. I have never seen him show any predilection or preference today. But I want to say this too. I would not agree with him. I didn't hear what he said, but I was glad for the unions to come out. This is politics. You have to understand, politics in politics, if you get the unions to back you up, it is sending a message to the PNM and the UNC, and the others are small parties, but the two big parties, that watch out, do not take it for given that you will win. And that is the message behind the unions coming out and supporting a particular party. And that's politics.
I just want to say this. First of all, I had criticisms for the Prime Minister, but it wasn't a big criticism. But I had other criticisms for the government. I understand the low-hanging fruit is what happened in the Ministry of Health. But to me, that's not the big thing. The big thing is the water levels. I was going to talk about that too. But then the other thing is this. I actually did say, I don't agree with the unions. I don't like how they operate. But I can't fault them. Hold on. But I can't fault them all the time when they criticize the government. And I can't fault them, right, for having issues with the government.
Let me tell you something.
I find the unions at the end of the day do not serve
Let me tell you something. If you follow American politics in any form or fashion, you will understand the power of the unions.
No, I understand the power of the unions.
And the unions are in a way a quasi-political body, and if they are helping the party that they think they want to win, I give them every right to do so.
No,
that
on its own is fine.
Yeah, and they could come out and say what they want.
But the behavior of the unions...
What behavior?
Well, and we'll say this. We have callers waiting. We'll say this. Yeah. I have already got on the record on it, folks, but we have Cascade on the line. Good morning. Caller, you're on the air.
Oh, Cascade.
Yeah, that was quite a wait, good people. I don't know what penalties the callers have to endure to participate in this program. We're losing sight of the program. Good morning to the listeners and viewers, wherever you might be. Let me say this morning, this is a very interesting and very important topic that you two people are debating this morning for more than one reason. It goes beyond the issue of silk. Too many things in this country are being done to, as it were, reward party followers. The whole question on national awards, we need more transparency in that. The question of the appointment of judges, we need more transparency in that. This appointment of silk is perhaps the one our experience. It seems as though the Keith Rowley administration has set out to prove that it is the most incompetent administration in the history of this country. You cannot justify silk to people who have not been practicing before the courts for 9 years. You cannot justify people who, in practicing before the public, have had to recluse themselves from so many in the career and are wired. Let me say this to you. The country has got to take a position that if people want to trade with the state, do not volunteer for office, because at one point or another, you are going to be compromised. If you know you want to be a cabinet minister, and you know you want to rent apartments to the government,
yes, that is true.
Decide which one you want. If your family business of renting apartments and houses and buildings to the government is more important, you will still have the back door to talk to the Prime Minister. But do not come and meddle in our people's business where we require, above all things, honesty, integrity, competence, concern for the people's wishes.
Very true.
Too many people on that list of 5 do not have the benefit of the doubt that they are concerned about the well-wishes, the integrity, the humanness, the concern for the people of this country. And I am prepared to stand up in Woodford Square and debate them together I against all 5 of them to deal with this fundamental matter. I rest my case on this, but I'm saying to you, as a reminder, it goes deeper than the award of silk. Too many people who do not deserve national awards in this country hold national awards, and that is why it is watered down. Nobody looks at an awardee in this country with any special respect and dignity. So, and on that case also, I have nothing against Tony Smart. I consider him to be a very good friend of mine. But Tony Smart has been the sitting chairman of the First Citizens Bank, which is the state-owned bank, which is an appointee. He has been chairman of that bank for all of this government's administration. He came in under Kamla, but he has been under this government's administration. And then he's given the award of silk. All of these things constitute query. And people may say this caller is Joe Backside. Maybe I am Joe Backside, but I will always remain Joe Backside in the interest of the people and and to protecting the integrity of this crown. I rest my case this morning.
Yeah. I will just say one thing, just follow up.
Quickly, we have a
based
follow-up
on the points that he made. If the criteria that is set out for the application in the Gazette notice from the Attorney General is the guidelines that they use, that the Attorney General and the Cabinet use, then many of the people, whether I like them or not, should never have been given silk because they have not been practicing before the courts for the last how many years.
We have San Fernando has been waiting for quite some time. I apologize. Good morning, caller, you on the air.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Karen. You know, Sean, I didn't call to comment on this, but I have to, after listening to your caller from Faisabad. There are some of your callers who decide that they're going to use this program as their soapbox to espouse their political ideas or their political support. So I am going to call them out this morning. Now, that caller talked about you not saying anything when, and I quoted him, when they had a mannequin of Kamala moving it up and down, dragging it up and down when they went to Labor Day. You had no program. Sean had no program when that was going on. Sean had no program during the 2010 to 2015 period. Let me just say that. Now, they come to criticize you and the media about politics when they are doing the same thing, They are politicking, Just what Karen said. They are coming on the program and politicking. That's what they do. And I look at you every morning, Sean, and the way you endure their comments and the way you sift it out and the way you handle their comments. Total professional. They're not supposed to come and criticize you. They're damn fast. Let me just say that. They're damn fast. Now, let me get to what I was calling about. Quickly. Now, Sean and Karen, I looked at the what do you call it? Faith Be Israel and for want of a better term, I can't remember the woman's position in the House of Assembly. It's like the chief accountant in the Assembly.
Okay.
Gave a case, outlined the presentation that is sent to the finance minister for funds. It was based on what they projected the media review was going to be. So it was about 300 and something million. I think this 326 million. I think if not somewhere around that ballpark that they sent asking for additional funds. And they only got the 50 million to pay for for the oil spill. Now, I looked at at the what do you call that thing for Tobago? I forget the document now. Yes, boy.
You're talking about the legal document that created.
Yes.
The THA.
The THA. And that document does not speak specifically to that media review, that pattern that developed some years ago. And I think it's a gray area that the finance minister in my opinion, does not have to give them, because even though he's asking for more money, I don't think the finance minister has to give them a 4.03% or the dispute resolution committee's allocation based on the mid-year review. It's only based on the budget, and I would like Karen to kind of, if you can, Karen, sift through that and give a what do you call it, and give an opinion on that particular issue.
Well, just sticking to that point, the 4% comes from the Constitution, and therefore it's the Constitution or supreme law that determines that. But when it comes to the budget, when you do the mid-year review, there's no, in fact, in the mid-year review, oftentimes you may not get anything at all because the revenue position is bad. So I'm not quite sure how you are applying that to the...
No, but that's the point he's making. The point he's
I'm
making
agreeing
is,
with him.
Right,
I'm agreeing with him. So I'm trying to say the only time at which the percentage applies, and it says up to, is in the Constitution for the budget. But the mid-year review is not a budget. A mid-year review is a variance of the Appropriation Act. In other words, if you can, you give more to particular ministries because the need arises, but it is not based on using the percentage.
Okay, well, Carla, it might not have answered your question, but I don't want to misrepresent what it is you are asking, so I'll refrain.
Which is what?
I'm not entirely sure, because I think he wanted to go into the Dispute and Resolution Commission with regards to the 4 to 8%.
Yeah, but that is what. Yeah, but that's what's
is that enshrined in the Constitution?
In the Constitution.
Okay.
The Dispute Resolution Commission is enshrined in the Constitution.
So with that said, we have Santa Cruz has also been waiting for quite some time. I'll comment on everything else after. Good morning, caller, you're on the air. Caller, good morning.
Yes.
Morning, caller, you're on the air.
Good morning, folks. I want Trinidad and Tobago, especially the Afro-Trinis, to remember that Ansel Roger, like the other trade unions, they are responsible for a lot of what happened over the few years to this economy in Trinidad and Tobago. You remember the first oil rig that was built here? It was built in record time and within the budget. When I can't remember the name of the rig.
I know what you're talking about.
But when we got a contract to do a second, and Ansel Roger, as usual, they decided, like, you're going to get a big contract, U.S. contract, so I don't know, probably start, so we into the money business. But Ansel Roger walked out, called his workers out, and his reason for
Caller?
yes, that's something. Okay, just 1 second, please. Yeah.
All right, caller. All right, thank you.
But what she's really criticizing Ansel Roger to be a hypocrite. But that's politics, you know what I mean? That's politics.
I know, but one, you see,
I look at it
there are things that the unions do that bothers me, but like I try to make the point that at the end of the day, I can't fault their stance on wanting to go against the government. I just, wish...
So you see, what is down in Uriah Butler, well, if you were in the days of Uriah Butler, you'd also be one of them would have locked him up in the... you have to understand that a union depends on its union membership.
Right.
And if it is not seen as doing anything or standing up against, they're going to lose members.
Right, and my problem is, again, they're doing more of that like a politician than
that's what they are.
Well, we have Baratari on the line. Good morning, caller. Morning,
Can you
caller.
hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you. You're on here.
All right. So we have Mr. Nunes Teixeira, and we have the host. What's your name, sir?
Sean. You could just call me Sean.
All right, Sean. Very good program as usual. I listen to you all off and on. Very good program. But I want to ask a question this morning, and I don't know if I'm in the right or the wrong. But do you think in Trinidad and Tobago it's time that we look at labor laws properly in this country pertaining to value for money? Because what I'm seeing and hearing that the largest percentage of our revenues goes towards paying public service debts, which is salaries and so on. And you walk into any ministry today and ask the average citizen in Trinidad and Tobago if they get proper service or they're satisfied with the service that they're getting from the ministries and from certain public servants and civil servants. And also I want to tie it into how do we measure value for money, productivity, unproductivity, and what is the justification for giving more than 4% or 20%? What is the justification? And do we think if we continue going down this road, if Trinidad and Tobago, where we will be when our oil and gas revenues are drying up daily and by daily and daily? I would like to ask that question. So can you all give me an answer? Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to say, we have a lot of laws that needs cleaning up, but part of the issue we have that you were highlighting isn't just maybe issues with the laws. Some of it might be outdated. It might just need updating for new circumstances of 2024. But part of it also is the lack of accountability, and this is where the government is involved, because to some extent, lack of accountability comes from the top down. Right? And the obvious examples I have for that is with regards to certain national security services. The borders are not secure. And we have heard rumors or speculation, or people have said, right, so I can't say that a court of law has determined this, but there are times when the boats don't go out because they get a call to say, don't go out tonight. The implication is somebody was paid off, right? Now, again, we don't know how true it is. A lack of transparency does not help, but at the end of the day, we know what the result is. The result is the borders are open, right? And regardless of how the Coast Guard has reached the point where they are being bypassed, whether legitimately or criminally, right? The point is, I don't think that enough is being done to hold the service to account, and it starts from the top. The minister holds the head of the Defense Force. Head of the Defense Force holds the head of the Coast Guard. Head of the Coast Guard then goes down the line on the office of the Coast Guard. Who is responsible for the borders being so porous?
Yeah, but I think he's talking generally about the salaries and whether productivity, if the salaries and the productivity are equal. And the reality is you've singled out the national, the defense and Coast Guard as an example. But it can go right across the board. And the thing about it is, just as how I made a comment, whether, I am not saying I support one way or the other, but I am being a realist. In the same way, the unions use their powers when they can politically because they have a membership. In the same way, the government has an overstaffed WASA. I just read, after you're saying you're going to restructure WASA because it's over, the HR is overstaffed, you have just fired the acting CEO, you've added 9 new members, and are in the process of hiring another set of top level members, and then you're saying we are not at this moment starting to they wouldn't use the word retrench, but they will use the word to restructure. So the blame goes squarely at the feet of the PNM or whichever party is in power, because that is who will vote for them. Same way the unions are doing it is the same way the government is using the salaries, the CPEP and the URP and the overloaded public service.
Yes.
All of that is in order for political patronage.
That's a key point. The union might defend retaining the jobs, but it's politicians who bloat for the most part, and maybe some senior public servants, right? But Michael Anasat said it best. They did an exercise in the port. They downsized, they got rid of the redundant workers, and then slowly but surely, politicians, right? Yeah, this one needs a job, that one needs a job, the next one needs a job.
But they did it in WASA too.
Right.
WASA IDB gave, I think it was Pandey, and Mr. Pandey, when he was Prime Minister, that one of the conditions of the loan is IDB or IMF, one of those international agencies, that one of the things that had to do is they had to, too much duplication, they overlook things. So he did retrench a number of workers and he brought it down to what they wanted. And soon enough, it went right back up.
And the thing is,
it's politics they're playing.
The thing
you sit on there and think that's not working.
WASA was on the table since 2018, after Petrotrin, right? It's been 6 years, right? I appreciate the Minister of Public Utilities, but the one issue that I have with him is, and
what do you appreciate? What I taught him, I like him, but what has he done in WASA?
They're getting more wells, they're increasing supply. The thing is, I think a lot of the problems is, and this is what I was going to get to if I had the time. Our water situation is in part limited by government's budget prioritization. And I think, and part of that also means cabinet making a major decision. I think Marvin Gonzalez can make a decision on his own about what to do about WASA. But with that said, thanks to all of the callers, thanks to the good lady. I would just like to say this, Mr. San Fernando, I appreciate your comments. The thing is, no. I have no issue with him. I'll just say this. I don't, with regards to the caller before, I don't have an issue with someone disagree with me, and I have to accept that to some extent.
Mr. Heisberg?
Yes.
Just focus on what Mr.
No, I know, but hold on, Karen, we're wrapping up. The thing is, I just want to point out, the show welcomes disagreement. And with that will come some amount of political bias. Yeah, that's just the sour medicine or the unfortunate truth. That's just how it is, right? So I appreciate the defense, Mr. San Fernando, but I guess it's just something that you might have to accept a little bit, because we have to. I don't want to not engage with people and to make them feel that they can't.
Yeah, but they have to come with some good, solid points. You come just to talk about
I mean, Mr. Samando, I could tell that you watch enough of the shows to understand that it's not about what I say in one show, it's about the body of work of the commentary will determine whether or not I have a bias or not.
We know you don't.
Well, I mean, everybody has some kind of bias. You know?
Well, as far as one can, as a commentator, try to be objective. You do that.
With that said, folks, at the end of the day, I just have to say, as usual, make today a good day, as my co-host always says. Be safe out there. Remember your allegiance to your nation, your republic, and your fellow citizens. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN Content Capital.
Pledged to strengthen defense and security cooperation.
Vietnam will always consistently consider Russia as one of our most important partners, and it is willing to develop together with Russia a long-standing and traditional friendship and good cooperation.
Later, Putin met with the Vietnamese Prime Minister and the powerful General Secretary of the ruling Communist Party. The trip resulted in a sharp rebuke from the US Embassy. Vietnam has a pragmatic approach to foreign policy, and it has so far remained neutral on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But as a manufacturing powerhouse, its trade with Russia is a tiny fraction of that with the United States.
The U.S. state of Louisiana has become the first in the United States to require a poster-sized copy of the Ten Commandments to be displayed at all public classrooms. The move comes after the governor signed the legislation into law. Backers of the bill say it's not about religion, but opponents have vowed to challenge it in court.
Critics say it threatens to blur the separation between church and state enshrined in the First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. Republican Governor Jeff Landry signing into law new legislation requiring the Ten Commandments be displayed in classrooms across the state of Louisiana.
This bill mandates the display of the Ten Commandments in every classroom in public, elementary, secondary, and post-education schools in the state of Louisiana. Because if you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original lawgiver, which was Moses. Amen. All right.
The move makes Louisiana the first state in the country to require that the religious text be displayed in public schools. The law orders that posters no smaller than 28 by 35 centimeters be put up. On them, commandments must be laid out in large and easily readable font. While the religious text will be the central focus, it will also be paired with a statement detailing that the Ten Commandments have been a prominent part of American public education for almost 3 centuries. Soon after the bill was signed into law, civil rights groups vowed to sue. In a joint statement, the American Civil Liberties Union and several other organizations say the legislation is unconstitutional.
The First Amendment promises that we all get to decide for ourselves what religious beliefs, if any, to hold and practice without pressure from the government. Politicians have no business imposing their preferred religious doctrine on students and families in public schools.
It's not the first time such a case has come up. In 1980, the Supreme Court ruled that a similar Kentucky law was unconstitutional. But with 6 conservatives now in the top court, supporters of this new law believe the justice would rule in their favor in any potential lawsuit.
It's time now for Across Africa with France 24's Georgia Calvin Smith. Stay tuned.
Trust is our most precious asset. Every day, around the world, France 24, RFI and Monte Carlo Doualier join forces to bring you free, independent, verified, balanced information that fights manipulation, and in 21 languages. France Média Monde has been awarded the Journalism Trust Initiative Standard, which guarantees the professionalism and reliability of our international news media with a score of 100%. Trust is not automatic. It must be earned and cultivated. Thank you for your trust.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
On your marks, get set. The time has come for the long-awaited Paris 2024 Olympics and Paralympics.
The question we asked ourselves was, how can we give a French touch to this Olympiad? We challenged the artists to create a discussion and a meeting between the worlds of sport and art.
With more than 16 million visitors expected here over the summer, join us for a look at the cultural highlights taking place in the city that's arguably the artistic champion of the world.
Arts 24, presented by Eve Jackson on France 24 and France24.com.
Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Across Africa, a weekly look at stories from across the continent. I'm Georgia Calvin Smith, and this week, as the indiscriminate bombings of Sudan's 14-month war between the army and the RSF paramilitary continues, a recent resident of the besieged Darfuri city of El Fasher shares a rare account of the devastating toll of war on her and her family. Also, all aboard. 1,400 passengers get a free ride from Dar es Salaam to Morogoro on Tanzania's first electric standard gauge railway in celebration of a game-changing stop on the journey to transforming its infrastructure. And charcoal production can be a driver of deforestation. So one environmentally conscious organisation in Senegal's trying to get more communities to rely on less destructive and more energy efficient alternatives. But first, the UN Security Council's call for the end to the RSF paramilitary's brutal siege of the Darfuri city of El Fasher is a reflection of mounting global fear about the toll of Sudan's brutal war. Fighting between the army and the paramilitary RSF forces first began last April, setting off a number of humanitarian crises. Battling around El Fasher, the final city in Darfur not yet controlled by the RSF, has been particularly devastating. Their fears it could fall soon, and those trapped within would likely face a violent backlash. Little information has been able to make its way out, but I have this week managed to speak to one woman from the city who somehow did make it out of Sudan, but expressed how desperately worried she remains about the people she has left behind.
So since like the past maybe 4 or 3 weeks, basically, the situation in Fasher was so bad, and there was no internet connection or like a way for us to reach our families there. And then from then, you know, like the news starts like falling and raining on us like bad news. I mean, every day we hear like maybe 7 or 6 people, relatives actually, being killed or bombed or getting shot by snipers. Basically, the snipers are everywhere. So the sad thing is just like we feel like we are alone and forgotten. Somehow we just go to the social media and hear nothing about it, Fasher or Darfur, whatever. So basically, the situation is very bad. And my family, they are at the northern part of the Fasher. And our house yesterday was bombed twice. and children were fleeing from the neighbors to escape to our house because basically it's some kind of like a strong belt. And then they were running to take a refuge in our house, and then the bomb just somehow killed them and then cut them to small pieces in our front door. And my family now, they just can't escape because it's too late. There's no way to escape. Basically for males like above 16 or maybe 15, and the old people, they can't handle it. They can't go in like on foot to long distances. So basically, this is not me. Like everyone is just facing the same thing, and that is just unbearable, and nobody is doing anything about it. Especially like the big crisis is the hospital is not working anymore. The only hospital was just saving people. It's not working anymore. So the people who are injured, the likelihood of them to die soon after 1 or 2 days is very high. Like most of them, the injured people, there's no hope for them because they will die of bleeding or lack of medical care. So yeah, that's it. I mean, I know, like all of us, like I'm outside Sudan somehow, but like them, we are just affected by it, affected by what's happening there, and we feel helpless somehow. And then, yeah. So I'm so sorry, dear.
Well, June is International Pride Month. It's a bittersweet celebration for the LGBTQ+ community in Kenya, though. Gay people there are increasingly aware of the risks of even using dating apps, as several incidents have been reported of users being tricked into meeting someone only to then be robbed or kidnapped. And many believe that there is a homophobic motivation to these attacks. Our team tells us more.
Why about your case? So where is it like now?
The last time I checked, the case was about